you have a stake in the place where you live, and like you can help create the culture that you want to live in. So my name is Kathleen Livingston. I am an assistant professor of writing and rhetoric in the Department of Writing, Rhetoric, and American Cultures, and also in the Residential College in Arts and Humanities. I was first a reader and a collector. So I've always been a person who, probably since the 90s, I've always been a person who was really interested in personal stories, like other people, like getting to know other people through reading their personal stories. Sometimes people start as a reader and then they're like, I could do this. So I think that zines allow anybody to self-publish their work, and so they really lend themselves to this type of like authenticity and honesty, which I was really attracted to. So I got my first zine at this really small record store in Trenton, Michigan, where I grew up. Remember, like there was like a little stand of them towards the door, and I would go into the record shop and kind of shop around, but like really, because I'm a writer, like I really wanted the zines. I definitely collected music, but once I found zines, like that was kind of my avenue into making friends, into particular like scenes. I really like zines, so I really like the personal aspect. So I typically collect zines that are about feminism, queer culture, body image, consent. I have a ton of consent zines, and my students make consent zines. Teaching Phil was a collaboration between myself and my friend Madhu Narayan. She was a graduate student with me in the same program. She and I were always talking about how no matter how well you plan your class, you always have these moments where you're like, oh, that was a fail. Like, oh, I really wanted that to go well, but it didn't go how I imagined. It was pretty rare, like we only made like 20 to 50 copies total, and we mostly distribute it to other teachers, so other graduate students, other teachers in the program. Kind of this idea of how oftentimes women feel like we are imposters, like even if we're doing a really good job at what we're doing. I think that women tend to be really hard on ourselves. I think we always think we're doing a worse job than we actually are. Like I was like, oh, I failed at this, I think I had like a hard semester or something where I was like, is anything I'm saying making sense? I don't know. But the feedback from students was like, you're not failing, like you're fine. I have been teaching zines in my class since I got here in 2008. One of the things I love about zines is it teaches like cut and paste, like how in writing you need to actually be willing to cut up your work and completely rearrange it and change it. Sometimes people get really like attached to their writing and they're like, this is beautiful because I made it. And so it's hard for them to revise. So I started teaching zines as a way to teach revision. If you engage students in an interesting conversation, you'll get way more interesting writing. Otherwise, if you just say, write about whatever you want, you'll get like 50 essays about like how people love the Spartans. I have a ton of international students, which is one of the most amazing things about teaching at MSU. It's awesome. And so some folks have done amazing things where they have like written their zines in multiple languages, and sometimes they will provide a translation and sometimes they won't. Like sometimes they'll be like, if you don't know this language that I speak, then that part is just not for you. That part is for this other audience. We assume that you're either born a good writer or you're not. Like we assume that people are just born with this magic ability to write, or they're not, but it's actually a practice that you get better at through repetition. My favorite zines done by my students are the consent zines. I've been teaching the consent class, I think I've taught it 9 times, so I've done 9 sections of it. So each of those sections has about 27 students, and each of them made their own consent zine. They come into the writing class not knowing that it's going to be themed around consent. Most of the time they're like really surprised, like, whoa. So one of the things I try to do is I try to allow them or invite them to focus on consent across all different types of relationships. So it could be friendships, it could be like a relationship you have with your boss, it could be like negotiating things in the workplace, or it could be sexuality. It all has to do with language. And if we don't have the language to negotiate relationships in an ethical way, because we haven't been, that information has been kept from us. Maybe we came from a family where like sexuality wasn't talked about or relationships weren't talked about, then we don't even have the words that we need to be able to negotiate relationships in an ethical way, and then we just kind of jump into relationships and we're like, hopefully this works. I don't know. I think sometimes when people talk about consent, they only talk about violence, and that is so important. Like, I think we do need to talk about violence for sure. But I also think we need to teach people, like, okay, people know what it is, what violence is. We need to teach them how to have a healthy relationship too. Like a connection which is mutual and is reciprocal and is like satisfying for everybody involved. You know, like we need to teach them the positive aspect too, which I think is one of the things that they really liked about the class. Like living where I live downriver, like there wasn't a lot of access to information or resources that were outside of like the mainstream. Zines were one of the first places that I got access to all of that information that I felt like was kept from me. I remember feeling like so betrayed when I first started reading zines, especially like sex ed zines, where I was like, nobody told me this. Like, this would have been good to know like 10 years ago or something. Like, I can't believe nobody told me that. I get to watch students both share their knowledge but also go and research and like learn things that have been kept from them, and it's a really like magical process to watch them communicate that information about sexuality and about consent and about relationships to an audience of their peers. So like they get to intervene in part of this problem of this lack of access to information by actually producing a thing that's going to help create access for more people. They got to know each other in a way that I don't think that they would in other kinds of classes. It took me a long time to make friends in Lansing because it was like a new place, and I had these communities like in the Detroit area that I was like so close to, and so it took me a little while to feel like really rooted here. I think one of the weird things, which I write about in my newest zine, one of the weird things about college towns is that nobody really plans to stay. I'm trying to do a better job of like getting connected locally, even if folks are not gonna stay. Because then it's kind of fun. If they move away, I have people to visit. When you come back, it is about it's about how challenging it is to make friends when you're an adult, and it basically takes you through like different stories and memories of friendship and love and longing for connection across different time periods in my life. So some of it is like old stories and some of it is new stories. One of the things that I write about in this zine is, like, one of the reasons I think it's hard to make friends as an adult is because there's so much backstory to get through. It's hard to know, like, when I was younger, it would just be like, you would stay up all night or go to a show and then you would stay up all night and like, just tell each other everything. But as an adult, I'm like less likely to do that. And so I think that now as an adult, like we kind of reveal things about ourselves to each other, like just a piece at a time, which is really lovely actually. Like it's a way to get to know each other in like a really deep and sweet way, to just kind of go slow. It has some photos that I took which you can also see on my Instagram. And it has some original writing that is never been seen before. And some obscene things in there. Usually I make a zine when I'm trying to make friends. Like I'm trying to connect with other humans. One of the things that I think is really amazing about the time that we're in is that we have all of this immediate access to our friends, like many times all over the world or all over the country, right? We have the internet a lot of times, and so we can like communicate with each other. But I always really want, like every time I post something online, it's like, it's longing for connection with a real human, and I almost want them to like reach out of the machine and appear in my real life, right? And so making a zine is kind of a way to be like, hey, let's be friends. Love the zine collection at MSU. I'm so amazed and impressed by it. In the past, I had some students do some things with it, like I asked them to go and like look at the zines there. They're like time capsules. When I was little, there was this like thing where you would like take a bunch of stuff from your current life and you would put it in this little capsule, and you were supposed to like bury it or something in the ground, and then you would dig it up many years later and be like, wow, this is what 1991 was like. It's almost like through these objects you are able to access memories that you otherwise would not be able to. So zines are kind of like that. I think that one of the things that Special Collections does is that it both maintains a sense of the long history of zines locally, but it also shows people as new things are added that this is something that is like still going on. Like people haven't stopped making zines. Because zines are not that serious, I'm more willing to be like, who cares if the verb tenses matter? I don't care. Like in this zine, it's not perfect. And I'm like, I have a PhD, but it's still not perfect writing, but like, I just wanted to get it out. Like when you give somebody your zine, you're like trusting them with like what's inside your head. You took the time to actually type out your thoughts and your feelings and your stories and like cut it up and put it in this beautiful form and then hand it to somebody. I think like the level of care that it takes is a little bit more than just like making a quick social media post. I think zines can provide alternative stories, like stories that don't get represented in mainstream media, and people just say like, okay, you're not gonna publish me, like I'll publish myself.